everybody, we're going to come to order. Finance Committee on October 22. Thank you, Sandy. Let's identify ourselves for the record, starting with Ryan.
Ryan Hogan.
Howard D'Amico.
Sandy Pipers.
Dick Vandenberg.
Michael Hudnock.
Lynn Mazzoli.
Okay, and we're missing Heather, but perhaps she'll come, so we do have our quorum. So our first item for tonight is to have a discussion about the Community Preservation Act. And our goal tonight is just to get information and so we can go home and think about it and be good voters on November 5. So, Lisa, are you here?
Nope, she's not here.
Sue, are you here?
I'm here, yes,
Can you come to the...
I can. Can I bring my crowd or?
You by yourself is fine.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you could identify yourself for the record and your role in the Community Preservation Act.
My name is Sue Perkins, and I am Chair of the Open Space Committee, and we have a subcommittee, the Community Preservation Act.
Okay.
And we spent last 2 years, up till January of this past year, working on the open space and recreation plan. Took 2 years to get it. We had a grant for $18,000 from Central Mass Regional Planning and put it all together. And now we're looking at the recommendations, one of which is to get the Community Preservation Act voted in town.
Okay.
And, you know, both of them will bring in grants, you know, as far as that's concerned. But, so people need to be educated on the community. Have you read about it, or?
We have. So I think, first of all, I'd like to just ask any Finance Committee members if you have any questions of information for Sue. Something you don't quite understand about the proposal or anything like that.
Does she want to talk about it a little bit, or you just
Well,
want to
just questions for information right now, sir. Is there something you don't know or don't understand, I guess? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I have one. So the state offers matching.
Right. Matching according to how much is in the funds for the deeds.
Correct. Do you know what percentage?
At the moment, it's 21. Matching sounds like 100%, but it's not.
Okay.
And it all depends on, they said this year, there's 200% more deed transactions than last year, so at November 15th, it's probably going to jump up. Then one year, the state threw a whole bunch of extra money in it for whatever reason, you know, so it's not predictable. If the economy's good and houses are selling and people are doing deed transactions, then all that money is going into the account, so.
Okay. Anybody else? Questions? Sandy?
Where does the state get their money from?
The deed registry of deeds.
So the registry, so when,
That's where all the money that,
explain that a little bit more.
so whenever anybody does anything with property, they have to register it at the Registry of Deeds, and that costs money. And all that money is deflected to the 196 towns out of 351 that have adopted this program, that we can put a surcharge on the taxes between 1% and 3%. And we figured, you know, Mendon went for 3%, and, you know, Northbridge, I don't know what they have, but we thought 1.5% would be a good, and you can change that at any time. And this, if it is adopted, it will be here for 5 years, and then we can vote it out. And anything that comes up with it, has to be voted in a town meeting.
So back to the registry of deeds, they collect money when you go and
Do a transaction.
do a
Yep.
transaction. So they didn't need this money anymore for anything.
I don't know what they were using it for in the past.
So now they have leftover money, and so they just give it to the town.
If the town adopted the CPA, and depending on the percentage, they have to give that. And then, you know, we have rules and regulations of what 10% for 10% for open space and recreation, 10% for historic preservation, and 10% for affordable housing. Has to be used for those. So there's another 70%, you know. We could pay 5% and have an administrator oversee the whole thing, you know. But then there has to be a committee of a person from planning, a person from conservation, a person from housing, a person from historic, and a person from parks, which doesn't presently exist, but some other person that's involved, plus maybe 4 other members, random members in the community, to make up a possible committee of between 5 and 9.
So Sue, a question I had was the way the thing is worded that we will vote on
I have the wording right
on
here.
November
What?
5.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of unknowns in terms of how it's administered. In other words, the town meeting needs to affirm the committee and so on and so forth.
Well,
Has there been any track record of any towns voting for the Community Preservation Act, but then the town meeting not forming the committee? Or have all towns that have formed it also formed the committee and put that mechanism in place? Do you know?
I'm not sure I understand.
You need to set up the committee, correct?
Right.
What
We're
if
not the
that-
committee.
I know it.
Right.
What
So,
if the
yeah.
town meeting doesn't set up the committee?
No, the town meeting doesn't have to set up the committee. I think the committee can just set itself up, you know, and I guess the Board of Selectmen has to approve it. I'm not even sure whether that's,
Are you sure about that? Because when I went to the website, and looked at this, the
Yeah, I'm not-
rule, it sounded like that it said the legislative body, which would be the town meeting, needs to set up the committee in order to decide
Yeah.
what land and so on
right,
and so
to
forth.
follow through with all the whole thing, yeah.
So what if the town meeting doesn't? What happens?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe someone else wants to join. But
Maybe it's just stalled.
Yeah. Any-
it's actually, it says here that it isn't actually going to go into effect until January 2006, I believe. 26, yeah.
Yeah.
So would it be 5 years from that point then? 5 years from 2026?
Well, we can bail out in 5 years,
So you have to take.
and we can change the percentage anytime within that, too.
You have to take steps to bail out, it doesn't automatically sunset.
Right.
So if they voted in, then they can't get out for 5 years.
Right.
And then if nobody does it, then it stays in there. But it doesn't automatically sunset.
Right. And you can change, I know Mendon has changed the percentage within the whole timing. That doesn't have any time.
The 1.5%, 3%, 2%? You're
Right.
saying the surcharge percentage? Does that require a town vote again to change that, or would it be up to the discretion of the committee to change that percentage?
I think it's a town meeting that has to do it.
I think it goes on the ballot again, is my understanding. If you're going to change the percentage, it's going to go on the ballot again, is my understanding.
All right, any other questions for Sue? Just kind of an information. Yeah, Ryan, go ahead.
So what kind of expenditures, or how do you envision these
Hey,
funds?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah,
can folks speak up? We can't hear with this blower going in the back.
well, we have microphones on the table, and we're doing the best we can, I
Thank
guess.
you.
So,
Speak up, huh?
I guess I'll
move it
speak,
closer
Here,
to you,
right.
Ryan. then. Yeah.
well, you're going to have to answer, so why don't you take that one? So one of my thoughts is, what do you envision we would expend these funds on? I don't even know what spending 10%, when you say affordable housing, how would the town
Well,
spend
I
money
mean,
on
that could
affordable
even
housing?
be, that could be just helping seniors put in a ramp at their house. You know, it can go for small things. You
That's
know,
not affordable housing, no.
well,
That wouldn't qualify. I work in the affordable housing
right,
genre, and putting a ramp, it's accessibility, mobility.
right.
But what they would be looking for is for you to actually adding units of housing in town is what the state would be looking for there.
Lisa, you want to come to the?
Join us? No?
I just want to hear what's being said right now.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's turn off. Well, it's not just building affordable housing. It's, helping seniors and things like that. But
So if I can follow up, if this passes and we raise money, some simple math, it'd be 125, 150,000 per year, right? I think at 1.5%, or is that?
the
So,
town would probably raise $250,000
okay.
at the 1.5% level.
So we're asking people to have their tax increases. I don't have a good feel what will we spend that money on.
It's a surcharge, it's not a tax
Okay.
increase, but,
You can call it what you want.
Yeah.
People paying more money paying more money, so I'll let others decide that. But
yeah. Well, there's things like, for affordable housing, I would say that there's repairs, that they might not have to go through the whole town process to get certain monies
who
from the
might not
town.
have to?
Well, I mean, say there's Riddlebrook down there, maybe Hayward Landing, things like that, or just making units splitting up a home into 4 units or whatever, something like that, to make affordable housing.
Okay.
Yeah, sure, Lisa.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just want to add that a big part of having the Community Preservation Act is that the funds collected over time can be leveraged so that when grants do come up, we have a pool of money to be able to match those opportunities, that we have a pool of money to be able to sit at the table and be able to access public funds. The state has a lot of money right now with things like affordable housing, with grants for recreation and land protection. And the folks who get those grants usually have private donations as well as the Community Preservation Act funds to be able to leverage, because those are all matching grants. Almost no one gives you an outright blank check for the money that's needed to proceed with these projects.
Do you have an example or examples of projects that the committee or that we would be looking to do with that? Are there, you talk about projects to be able to sit at the table on grant funding, such as, what?
Sure, towns like Mendon and Northbridge recently looked at acquisition or for a conservation restriction on open space that the town had long-term plans to protect. Because they were able to match a grant from the state, they were able to proceed to accomplish that goal. They're also using those funds for affordable housing.
What types of properties would Douglas, and this is maybe a rhetorical question, but, I look at Douglas, I've been a lifelong resident here. We've got multiple sites that are protected and preserved right now, and one of the larger state forests in town. How much more do we need?
So if you look at recreation, does anybody here serve on recreation? So recreation-wise, the Open Space Committee is looking at trying to disperse some of those facilities so they're not just like concentrated downtown, or because as we grow, we need to be able to have opportunities for recreation, like basketball courts or pickleball or whatever. CPA funds can be used for that so that we have them in every quadrant of the town. And people aren't going all the way across town just to participate in some recreation.
Plus
That's just an example of an opportunity.
Just an example, the soccer field is on the other side of town, or the soccer fields are on the other town, behind the old VFW, so.
Right.
But
Martin
those could
Road.
be improved.
Right, Martin Road, there's fields at Martin Road as well.
What? They're very undeveloped.
They certainly could be.
Yeah. The,
Everything in
sit the
the
bleachers, you're
town can be
gonna fall over.
improved, it can be improved, it's just.
Right, and this is giving a little bit towards the improvement. The ball field, we did with the open space and recreation plan, there's, the ramp is not wide enough for a wheelchair to get up to the bathroom. The handles on the, ADA compliancy is just absent. There's no parking at the majority of conservation properties. The conservation has no money for signs at the conservation properties. So, there's a lot of loopholes that we could fill with this little bit of money.
And these are just examples, and what's happened, I don't know if Sue touched on this, but we're leaving money on the table for other towns to use. So that's part of.
If we don't use it,
the
someone else
initiative.
gets it.
Somebody else, yeah, that's part of the initiative. And just that we should not, personally, we shouldn't leave any of those tools that give us an opportunity or a leg up to improve either the facilities we have or things that the community wants to do in the future. So I'm going to leave Sue to.
It's separate from the town budget, too. It's really not part of the finance
But
committee.
it's not separate from what people have to pay.
Right, town
Because
people.
they're going to be paying it in this surcharge.
So for me, $414,000 house, take off the $100,000 exemption, I have to pay $62 a year.
But now, here's the one thing, though, about that $100,000 exemption. Does that increase when, like, the valuations go up? I mean, I see houses, I built a lot of houses.
It'll stay at 100.
Yeah, I built a lot of houses here in town, and I see the houses that, that were assessed at 300 and they're selling for 600. So the next time that the appraisal comes out, everybody, and it doesn't really affect people's taxes because everybody goes up.
Yep,
So
their
the tax
value
rate,
is, yeah.
But that 100,000's not going with it. There's the difference.
Right.
That 100,000 may be worth 100,000 now. The new valuation, it's only going to be worth 50,000 to
That's a
you.
big jump, but yeah.
So you're going to lose maybe 50% of that exemption.
Not right away, but yep.
I'm sorry, I got one more. So
Go ahead,
my understanding is the committee, so to speak, in the town have to agree on whatever spending project we're going to use for, within those
Be
limits.
Voted in at a town meeting.
I understand that part,
Yep.
but is town, I don't believe town meeting is able to spend those funds without the committee's approval as well. Is that correct?
Right, the committee has the say-so.
Okay. But we don't know who's going to
Right.
be on that committee currently. You have 4 spots, and then you said, well, we'll have to find a 5th, and then there may,
Parks, yeah.
there may
There's
be.
no Parks Department.
Right, and there may be 3 or 4 others. I mean, to me, it seems like a pretty, you're talking, you use $250,000 a year, that's fairly important position, but
Plus the match, yeah.
plus the match, yeah.
I don't think we have a housing department either.
A what?
I don't think we have a housing department.
Well, there is housing, but yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of housing.
Ben
I don't think-
Tessino is the head of the housing department, housing authority.
Housing authority. And
But-
what do they do?
I don't know,
Nothing.
kind of like recreation, when we did the open space and recreation plan, that people were hard to find.
So I'm just curious as to why this is on the ballot for the election versus being put
Well,
forth
we
to
needed
town
to get it to
meeting.
town meeting before May. We didn't really, we kind of wrapped up the open space and recreation plan in February or something like that, and really didn't realize that if we were going to do this, we needed to move very fast, so,
Because I've just heard a lot of people don't know about it.
right, it's hard to get it.
So,
Yeah, I mean, we're Facebook, everything, there was 3 articles in the letter to the editor last week in the Blackstone Valley. We plan to get one in every week, telling people this is a website you could go to and learn all about it. It's just
I just I wish there was
communitypreservation.org.
better notification for a lot of residents in town because this
We
will
we have a
affect
flyer coming
Yeah.
out soon as well.
before the election.
It was supposed to come out on the 20th, but any day.
Is that coming out of your budget? That $18,000 that you got?
We got more than that,
Oh, you got more than that?
because the signs, which are fast disappearing,
Yep.
unfortunately. Someone likes them better than, thinks they don't belong out there. So,
All right, any questions from finance? Yes, go
Just
ahead.
one more, I'm not sure, this might be for Chris. I've heard that part of the funding the first year can go to some new software to help implement the system. Is that something that we would need? Is it mandatory? Is it,
Just hang on a minute. So Chris is going to come to the table
Okay.
in just a second. So
okay.
let's do questions for Sue and then Chris's.
Well, I wanted Sue to be able to respond if Chris. if
Yeah, I
Chris-
don't,
Okay.
I thought that the state provided all that stuff.
No, according to
Yeah.
the presentation I found on the state website, it says tax billing software can be paid for in the first year only to implement the CPA, Community Preservation Act, so. I don't have any idea what that cost is and that sort of thing. That's
Yeah.
just kind of what I'm looking for.
All right.
Anything else for Sue, FinCom?
And I have a lot of ideas here. Yeah. All right,
All right, well, thank you.
welcome.
Chris, you want
Thank
to
you.
come up and
Thank you, Sue.
carry on with Ryan's question? And so Chris is our town auditor, everybody? Assessor. Or assessor, sorry.
I just want to do them a favor and further on to your question before I get started. There's a designated fee that is applied to each stamp at the Registry of Deeds that funds this. So there's a certain amount. It's not leftover money or anything like that. So there's a transaction at the Registry of Deeds. There's a certain portion of that is set aside to fund the state match for the CPA. Yep. Ryan's question, we are not really allowed to use the 5% administrative fee for the software update. So any administrative fees that apply to, funding from the CPA funds is limited to basically minute-taking, office supplies. If you hired a full-time person to manage CPA, you could do that. Any administrative staff and administrative efforts from the town software updates all comes out of municipal revenue.
So, okay. So I was led to believe there was some sort of tax billing software that would help with this.
It would have to integrate into our current billing software.
Okay.
It's not there now. There are other towns that use our billing software that have done this, so we know it's possible. We do not know the cost with it now, assuming typically when we hire out with Munis, it's $1,000 a day. So a multi-day to, what I have here is basically a list just from the finance side, and can pass these around.
And so it's your understanding that those, if we went to using the Munis, those funds collected from the surcharge would not be able to be used towards
For
that?
anything on this list would not be able to be used to do this. So that includes, when you look at the mechanism of how this applies, everything we do currently when we issue and collect a real estate tax bill has to be done in parallel for the CPA money, because that all has to be booked, maintained, tracked, invested separately. So if I issue a warrant to collect taxes to the finance director, I have to issue one for the real estate taxes and one for the surcharge. Somebody comes into, then that has to show up on the bill as a separate line item. So there's a software change in the billing system. Somebody comes in to make a payment to the collector, she has to book the real estate tax payment and the CPA payment. She turns it over to the treasurer, she has to turn over the real estate payment and the surcharge payment. So almost everything finance does now for a real estate tax bill has to be done in duplicate. It has to be parallel. That sounds a little worse than I'm making it. Sometimes we're doing twice the work. We wouldn't be doing twice the work. Hopefully you make the software do it for you, and maybe, instead of 2 sheets of paper, you're giving 3 over to get signed. But there's all of that cost, all of the cost for staff in the assessor's office, staff in the collector's office, staff in the treasurer's office, staff in the finance director's and accountant's office. That all comes from municipal money. That cannot be funded. So whatever those costs are, it's just absorbed by the town outside of CPA.
So are you saying that in addition to a surcharge, that all the taxpayers will be paid, there will be additional costs to pay for this in the town?
There will be additional.
Not just the surcharge?
No, and that wouldn't be, That wouldn't be then added to the tax bills, but it would be, you'd have to come from somewhere.
Municipal budget.
It would have to come from
So
somewhere.
the answer to my question is,
Yes, it has to come from somewhere in the municipal, somewhere from the tax bill.
so, right, so it's not just the 1.5% surcharge, it's also additional cost.
Additional cost. Now, I don't want to
Additional
be
consumption
muddy.
Against the.
Right.
Correct, because Prop
Which
2.5 says,
would come out
right,
Taxpayer dollars.
yes.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, Chris, you want to kind of walk us through your reaction to if the CPA passes, how that affects your office? And then we could have more questions, or?
Essentially, for my office, I touched on it, once I have values set, we hopefully have software that calculates, the $100,000 residential exemption, $100,000 commercial exemption. Gets a little muddy because if you're mixed-use residential commercial, so you're a $500,000 business, that's 250 residential, 250 commercial, you get 100 off of each, so your $500,000 surcharge is now factored at 350, but, so we have to have the software manage all of that, hopefully, or we're calculating them all individually. So I'm praying to God software does it. Because then you have to take into account, all of our chapter land is considered mixed use. So if you're in chapter and you have your house on it, your house is residential, your chapter land is commercial. Well, your chapter land is probably only worth assessed at $25,000 or $30,000. That's why you put it in chapter to get a huge tax break. So you only get $30,000 off of that because you can't go negative, and then 100 off in the register. So it's not just as simple as saying, you're assessed at 500, we're taking 100 off. There's a lot more in the mix because once you add those exemptions, you get the exemption for each one you qualify for. So most of downtown is mixed use. Everything chapter, which Douglas has a lot of chapters, all considered mixed use because they have a residential and commercial aspect to them. So we have to manage all of that just to issue tax bills. As I mentioned, we will add all the tax bills up, all the surcharge up, send a warrant and commitment to the treasurer, warrant to finance director, authorizing them to collect the money. After that, any exemptions, any abatements that we issue in our office, we then have to track separately, issue, reduce your tax bill by X amount, reduce your surcharge, figuring out $100,000 deduction on each one. We send that refund amount over to the treasurer. They would have to then book an abatement or exemption out of overlay, and then the surcharge refund would come directly from the surcharges collected. And then, you go right down this list, everything that they do, they didn't have to book that separately on the treasurer side. I think they can issue one check, but it has to be broken out, how much you're getting back on real estate abatement, how much you're getting back from your surcharge, and then, to the finance director, maintaining that all in the accounting books, and, reporting to the Department of Revenue, on all of these, any kind of fund balances, expenditures, all the money taken. Essentially, everything we do for a real estate tax bill, we do once again for the surcharge.
So Chris, what's the takeaway from your handout here? Some of this is a little arcane, I think, for the layperson, but is there
This was really trying to
a
pull.
theme here that we should focus on?
So the state issues what's called information guideline releases. So when the legislature passes their Campbell's soup can of legislation, the Department of Revenue issues an IGR, an informational guideline release that tells us how to cook the soup. If I can boil that down to a very simple, this one is a 75-page instructions on how we have to handle this.
75 pages? Is that what you said?
That's, it really covers, it covers enacting it, repealing it, all aspects of it. It has examples in the back to try and, as things have probably gone through the appellate tax board or the courts, then they'll try and adjust this to reflect that so that people kind of stay within the limit of the law. I think the question about the handicap ramp, I'm sure is addressed in here somewhere, if it had gone to court. If it hasn't gone to court and something like that did, and a decision was made, then they would update the IGR to let everybody know everybody's playing by the same rules. This document, I tried to, a selectman had asked that I try to boil this down to one page. I really kind of bullet pointed the impact just on the finance department, where I'm most familiar with municipal activity, the activities that we would have to take on that are not subject to being reimbursed from the fund itself. That would be handled, like I said, some of these things are probably just a click of the button once the software is updated, but some of them are going to be real effort.
Okay, any questions for Chris at all, anybody, about this or potential impact on his job and so on and so forth?
So one other thing I wanted to clear up. I'm not positive on amending, but I know on repealing this after the 5 years, it has to be repealed in the same way it was implemented. So if it's implemented through citizens petition ballot question, it has to be repealed that same way. So you'd have to do someone would have to initiate a signature collection and put it on the ballot. It's, as I'm reading, it's muddy on the amendment. It sounds like it's just the legislative body, but on the repeal, it says it has to be repealed the same way it was implemented. So I just want to make sure that.
Thank you.
Anyone from the audience have a question? Yeah, Lisa?
I was just hoping I could grab a copy.
Yeah,
Thanks. Lisa Melzinski, 60 Oak Street. I just want to remind the committee, if you have any questions, there's a great website, communitypreservation.org, but many, many towns in the Commonwealth have adopted the CPA, and they've done it so that they can take advantage of another pool of money, another tool in their toolbox, so they can do things like preserve their communities. And I believe Sue probably mentioned that we did a survey for the open space and recreation plan, and overwhelmingly people are concerned that Douglas is disappearing. The Douglas we know and love, the rural roads, the old buildings, the things that give the town character are disappearing. And this is a tool that we could use to help preserve some of that. So
Lisa, what's a
thank you for this.
what's a pencil sketch? What's a pencil sketch answer to if somebody stops me at Harry's one day and says, hey, we already have a third of our town as state forest. Why do we need more open space? What's a good answer for that?
It's not just open space, it's affordable housing. Can your kids afford to live here? Can your parents afford to live here? It's also recreation facilities. Are those facilities safe? Are they ADA accessible? Do we need more facilities in other parts of the town? So it's not just about open space. I know our
That's kind of the
committee-
perception, I think. though.
Our committee has brought it forward, but it's about a lot of other things that could improve and preserve the town. Our old buildings, the old school, grammar school, the old VFW hall, the old fire station. Everybody wants to save them. No one has any money to do it. If we come before you, you're going to tell us we have no money. And they're falling apart. And that's part of the character that everybody comes to Douglas to enjoy, and then poof, it's gone. So I appreciate you giving me some time to speak to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So any final questions, FinCom, for our town assessor or open space people? Anyone?
Would you anticipate with any of these additional tasks that there would be a requirement for additional hours for your staff? know it's tough to-
No, because it mostly would be compressed into, the billing time of year, so so December through the abatement period in February, exemption period in April, so it would be compressed into that time. I wouldn't expect it from my office, but I'm speaking for one office. professionally, I think, probably the other finance people would be better speaking towards their own particular offices if there was more man-hours required for something like this.
Okay, any other questions for Chris, anybody? All right, Chris, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, let's just carry on with our agenda then, everyone, to special warrant, or warrant for the special town meeting. So Jean handed out a most recent wording. So there are some changes from the one we saw 2 weeks ago. You might recall 2 weeks ago, there were some blanks and some numbers and so on. Matt, are you going to kind of walk us through these, or not necessarily?
I can. I noticed that the finance director took an exit stage right at a strategically viable moment.
Okay, so if everybody would look at what Jean handed out, let's just take them in order.
Oh, this.
She's back.
The one that,
It's always been.
Okay, who do you need?
this one,
What's here for
Oh,
you?
that one.
yeah. So if everybody look at
Here, this one.
Article 1, fiscal year 2024 budget
Yeah.
transfers, there are some changes from what we saw 2 weeks ago.
25 for the record.
Yeah, what did I say? 24. So for instance, 2 weeks ago, we didn't have an increase in town clerk expenses, did we, Jean?
We didn't. We added that because of the election. They feel they may need some off-duty police officers, both directing traffic and downstairs. So we increased their budget for that reason.
And then if you look, the next four are about the same, and then town hall office expenses also went up, right?
That was due to postage, again, due to the election.
So that was $3,000 2 weeks ago, now it's 5.
And that was to mail out the ballots.
Yeah. And otherwise, page 1 of 11 is the same as 2 weeks ago. And then if you go to page 2 of 11, increased community development expenses was XXX 2 weeks ago, and here it's $40,000. So can you explain that?
That is, sorry, do you want to?
No, I just, I don't know how to make this point or have this conversation. I'm back in Article 1 and that total. So the article calls for raise and appropriate and/or transfer from available funds. This number, 289,900, is less than the budgeted surplus. Therefore, I just think it's important to point out that, I don't know what you call that, I'm going to let Jean answer. I'll venture a guess and say that's unused levy capacity, which if it's not raised and appropriated, it will not be available in the future.
Well, there's other pieces to that, because we
Of course,
can use
yeah.
estimated receipts or increase the overlay.
How much less, Matt?
60,000.
Okay.
So that may be adjusted with the estimated receipts from motor vehicle. There's other ways to balance the revenues with the expenses when we do the recap.
Okay.
Just so everybody understands, though, that
Yep.
we had a budgeted surplus coming into special town meeting, and we did not spend it all. Okay.
So
We
what,
need to spend all our money.
No, we only spent what we thought we needed.
so what was the 40 grand for again, Gene? Community development expenses, what was that?
It's two pieces. One is bounds. So we put that's been floating around out there as a special article. I think sometimes people think of it as a capital expense. It's part of the closing checklist when you do a subdivision, is to put a minimum number of bounds, which are either granite, nobody uses granite anymore, they use a steel rod with concrete around it, so that future surveyors have a place, a reference point that's been established to take their measurements for lot lines and perimeters of the roads. So there's about 20,000 for that, and I believe the other 20,000 is for the conservation agent. We're at a good run rate right now. The position is contractual, so we pay on an hourly basis. So if there are not applications coming in for developments, then we don't spend. Conversely, if there are many that have implications for wetlands, then he gets very busy. Most of those expenses are paid by the contractor, by the general contractor under 53G. There are some functions in the office that are not eligible for compensation through the 53G process that are internal workings of the office, setting up agendas, extra reviews. We budget for that so that we're not short, because it is a contractual relationship. So we have to make sure we have enough sufficient funds in the budget to warrant asking the individual to take on the activity.
So any questions, anybody, on any of the items of Article 1 for a grand total of $289,900? Anyone have any issues with any of those numbers? Are you guys okay with a motion to recommend the $289,900 as presented, or do you feel we should read each item out with the total for this part of our, for the public who are all listening? Okay.
Well,
So,
they'll get the warrant, they'll be able to see it themselves, and they get their.
all right, would somebody move then that we recommend that we approve Article 1 as presented with a grand total of $289,900? Sandy moves. Second by Michael. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries unanimously. So thank you, Matt and Jean, for all your work on getting all those numbers together. All right, capital improvement. You might recall 2 weeks ago, that was not a number, that 438,533, that was X'd out. And the school security was blank, and that's 304,342. Grand total of 438,533. Matt or Jean, you want to talk about what's behind some of those numbers there?
Yeah.
Like the 304,340.
Absolutely. Just begging your forgiveness. I don't know what's going on with this winter that we'll never get here, but the allergies just seem to be a bit much. School security is the installation of security cameras at all 4 school buildings and the network equipment required to manage all that data and bring it back over our network to the dispatch center here, certain targeted cameras. And we went out to bid on the basis of a design that was not adequate. So we went out to bid, we had the contractors all come in, walk through the buildings, look at the proposal that our original designer had put together and said, that's just not going to work. Okay, so you needed to do more thoughtful process. And I heard that, and on the walkthrough, I was like, the last thing I want to do is put in a rinky-dink school security system. It's either kind of has to work. So we got another designer who did a much, much more aggressive job of specifying the system and specifying all the technology. There are some switches we need to buy. There are some licenses we need to buy in order to run this many cameras. And we had originally planned to fund this solely through the federal funds that we got from Washington as part of the COVID recovery. So we now had a town meeting, and we said, hey, town meeting, we're not going to do this fuel tank that was in the capital plan for $140,000. Maybe you guys remember this. It wasn't one that had already been approved, it was one that was in the capital plan, and the school administration said, we don't need the 140 for that other tank. Why don't you just put it towards school cameras, which we did. That was in May. Bids were due in June. The bids came in June, and the lowest bid was, I'm going to round the numbers to have a conversation, about $450,000, and we only had about $300,000 available to us from ARPA and from town meeting. So the school committee voted in executive session to triage the project and to do only 2 of the buildings instead of 4. And I asked the vendor to hold their pricing, so the bids in June, would they hold their prices from June all the way to December 1st, to give us an opportunity to have at least a conversation with town meeting as to whether or not town meeting would be willing to fund the other 2 schools. So that's where we get this 304 number. That is the final project cost above and beyond all the remaining ARPA funds and the money that's already been set aside by town meeting. So that's where we are with this. It's a very complicated project. There are things that this 304, 342 includes a change order. Because once you start to pull some of this old equipment apart, what you thought was behind it isn't there. So we thought a lot of these cameras at the high school were modern network cables. They were actually coaxial cable. So they all have to be pulled out. They all have to be rewired. And the industry has found a way to rob us all. I'm going to just be blunt about it. And so instead of having one encoder with a license, now every single camera needs to have a license. So instead of one, this one particular nodule at the high school that was coax cable that we didn't expect, instead of having one license for that, we'll now need 22. So that's not to say that each individual license for each individual camera is super expensive, but when you multiply anything times 22, it's going to be a pretty decent number. That's the bad news. The good news was they did the same process at the elementary school, and the good news was the cable was exactly what they hoped it would be. So some of the aspects of the change order are not exactly going to mesh out. I'm not going to change this number because I think at the end of the day, if we come in under budget, we all know what to do, right? Gene will hold it. When the project closes out, we'll transfer it to something else. But as I said before, this is one of those all or nothing kind of projects. It doesn't make any sense to put cameras that cover 80% of the school and leave 20% vulnerable because bad people have a way of figuring out what you can't see and exploiting it. So that's a long-winded explanation, but I thought you would benefit from the travel because this has come up several times, and that's how we've ended up where we are.
Any questions on that for Matt? So if you look at the bottom, everybody, you see transfer from free cash 401 220 68, which was blank 2 weeks ago. And then the grand total of 438 533 was blank 2 weeks ago. So Gene, where's our free cash? How's our free cash doing?
Free cash was certified, it's on my desk. I'm going to let Matt give you the approximate number at this town meeting.
Wow.
It's three.
This is like a game of password. I pass.
I know. But
More
this,
than 401,200.
it's more than $1,890,320.68.
For crying out loud, Gene.
So it's 3.7.
So we
Are
can,
you giving an estimated amount, Gene?
No, that's why she's telling you to do it.
She never gives estimates.
so we can afford it.
Whoa, it's approximately 3.7 million
Before what you're about to spend.
before we're about to spend.
We were certified.
Is that, that's an unusual.
It's a little bit lower than last year.
A little lower
We
than
did-
last year.
So
But it's
before you
significant- but-
say it's a lot of money,
But-
we had over $800,000 in turnbacks. I did close out a couple of the CARES grants, and that was about 200,000. It was about 175, I'm sorry. And we had some penalties for the conservation, which is over 100,000, and our earnings on investments were high. Part of the reason was because we didn't spend our ARPA funds. So we had, and that's general fund revenue, so we actually,
So I grew up in a house where we used what was called the float.
Yeah, no,
So,
got it.
you know what I'm talking about.
But so the last 2 years are significantly higher than the previous several years.
Previous 16. So
That's what I thought.
the number is, because I don't give estimated numbers, with Gene sitting next to me, $3,730,252. Now, what I will do is give an estimated number from last year. I think that's only about $30,000 or $40,000 less than last year. Last year was your record, so this is your second highest ever, but these 2 years taken together is more than the last 16.
But you're about to spend a lot of it.
Oh, yeah,
we are.
absolutely.
we are. But last year, remember, we had the building permit in there.
Right.
So, I just want to remind people, there's a story behind this, and we want to know the story.
Okay.
So then, everybody, if you look at your handout for tonight, the Article 2 amount is $438,533. Everybody good with that? Any questions on Article 2? Good. Somebody willing to make a motion that we recommend to the town meeting that we pass Article 2 as presented with that number?
So moved.
Lynn's got you beat, Mike.
Got her hand up before I said it.
Mike second then?
Second it.
So the motion then is to recommend Article 2 as presented with the grand total of $438,533. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstain, motion carries unanimously. Article 3, the personnel compensation chart is the same as 2 weeks ago. Matt, anything to add to that?
No.
It's all good to go? Any questions on Article 3, anyone?
That's part-time, right?
Correct.
Does that need to be said in here?
No.
No?
There's all, so what's required from town meeting is the authorization to place the position into a rate of pay that I will then sign off on. But as for their hours, it's a budget question. So the director of the senior center has only budgeted this for part-time.
We approved the wages in Article 1.
Right, okay.
So would someone move then that we recommend Article 3 as presented? Howard moves it, second by Sandy. Any discussion on Article 3, anybody? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstain, motion carries unanimously. All right. Bob, are you around?
He was.
He's there.
I am.
So, Robert, 1.8 million for Depot Street project. Can you comment on where we stand with the numbers right now?
We still don't have a final number till the bids come in. These are the best engineers' estimates we can get.
So that grand total of 840, that's still,
They
yeah, go ahead, Bob.
840 is the funding sources outside of the borrowing. So this is a kind of multifaceted project here. We're covering multiple different things, and when we went to the select board, we had discussed that, we want to do the whole project, right, so we're not coming back to repair things after the fact. So we can get the project done, and it'll be good for 20, 30 years, and none of us will have to revisit it.
So
So there's different portions of this project, the culvert, being funded by Chapter 90 money. But the sidewalks, it was discussed and agreed with the select board that the free cash would fund the sidewalk portion of it, and that's the estimated number. They're all laid out so that when we have these kind of as itemized projects, so if the sidewalks come in under 350, then that money would go back to free cash. If the engineering, so there's an engineering portion of this for engineering oversight during construction, they estimated it 461,794. So if that comes in under, then that money would go back to the retained earnings. The other two numbers for the water booster pump station account, this $14,438.53 there. That's money that was left over from a project that we did years ago, and in order to move that money, it needs to be a similar type construction project. And the same thing with the water main by the North Street Bridge. Those were funds that were left over that were rolling in and trying to clean up Jean's books to have her track less things.
But
so then the remaining amount would be the $840,000 to Clark, but some of that number would be affected by what the bids come in at.
So in terms of what the number that people will be voting for at the town meeting, that is not sure yet, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And we were slated to get that number on the 25th, but some documents, and we had a delay on the Concom portion of this project to get it posted with the bids. So the engineer was recommending that we give an extension to the bidders until Tuesday. So we'd have to wait a little bit longer. I forget what day Tuesday is, the 28th maybe? 29th?
Tuesday's the 29th,
Yeah, so to give them a couple extra days to look at the order of conditions from conservation so that they can bid correctly and hopefully avoid any change orders due to not having the information they needed to bid appropriately.
Is that 1.8, I know you don't know the final number, but is that a generous guess, do you think, or can't you tell?
The engineers typically try to be conservative. I think their goal is to hit the middle of the line for where the bids would come in. So if you have 10 bidders, this would be like in the middle, the fifth bidder or something. So if you had a range from 1.6 to 2 million, they're figuring 1.8 is the middle of the line. And we have to go with low bidder unless it's a certain contractor, and then we'll go with the second lowest bidder.
I asked that very same question.
So,
Not that you're overcommitting the procurement officer or anything.
so Bob, if the Finance Committee wanted to hold off until the night of the town meeting to make our final recommendation because we don't have all the numbers in, would the ones that are listed, free cash, water sewer retained earnings, water booster pump and so on, would those still be the same? It's just other, some we're not sure of, or might those change too?
So the borrowing would change. The free cash could possibly change. The booster station would stay the same. The water main would stay the same. And the engineering during oversight, the retained earnings, that would stay the same because we don't know what that cost is going to be until the end of the project. I'm guessing that number is significantly high because I think that the engineers got a little gun shy because we had some issues with one of the previous contractors, and it ran into a lot more money on that line item due to the lowest bidder being, not as responsive and not as quick. So it required a lot more engineering oversight. So I think they're being highly conservative on that, thinking worst case scenario. But we don't. It's not a contract where we pay them a lump sum. It's a time and material. So, they estimate so many hours of work based on how long they anticipate the job to take. We had one contractor that started this project that put 400 feet a day in on average of water main, and then the second contractor averaged, under 100 feet a day. So, the it's 4 times as much engineering oversight in man hours. So it's kind of a crapshoot, but as long as we get a good contractor, I think that number is significantly high.
Questions for Bob, anybody? Comments? Yeah, Ryan?
Not for Bob, but probably for Gene. Are we going to have the final numbers for the printing, or are these the numbers that are going in the printing?
You're getting the numbers on Friday. Printer,
Can he say Tuesday?
well, you get opening bids on Friday, correct, Bob?
Well, that's what I had just stated, and I got to talk to you whether or not, well, you and Matt, as to whether or not we do grant an extension on the bids due date.
So
I already explained to them that we're really tight on timeline, so I don't know that that's possible, but
the printing is.
in the event that we don't get it, it could be printed this way, and we could make an amendment on the floor.
As long as it doesn't
I
go
know
out of
Gene
the
doesn't like to hear that.
Well, it's whether the moderator allows it. You probably won't increase it. It is going to print on the 28th.
Okay. And one more question. I don't remember seeing the borrowing on here written like this in the past. How exactly, or is that?
Reviewed by bond counsel, so it's their language. It made it a little confusing because of the other sources as well.
Okay. But we'd be borrowing inside the levy, not outside levy.
This is,
Water.
Water's borrowing.
yes,
Okay.
Correct.
All right.
A water spout over this.
yeah.
Is that,
So this is not a debt exclusion?
that's not stated in here, I guess that's assumed. Right on the, I don't know if it should be, wasn't apparent to me. I'm not sure it'll be apparent to town meeting members if it's not stated
Maybe we
in
can
the
put it in
motion.
the commentary.
Okay, oh, that's a great idea, actually.
Commentary. Any more questions or comments for Bob? Anybody?
Just to talk a little bit about this, the project cost is Bob, total,
487,167.
so part of this is being paid by Opera as well, 1.3 something. So you have not only what you see here, but you have the Opera piece. So usually we split the debt between the town and the water sewer rate users. So some of our town piece is coming from Opera free cash, those two pieces.
Yep.
And Chapter 90 is 300,000 of this. So you have 3 other funding sources that you do not see here.
Great. Thank you.
Chapter 90 is the state program for capital stuff, right?
No, it's a revenue sharing program for roads
Oh, roads.
and drainage.
Gotcha. So what's your sense, group? You want to just pass on this and look at it the night before our town meeting, the night of the town meeting? Because we don't have all the numbers, or should we do that? Any objection to that? All right, so hearing none, so by consensus, we'll just pass over Article 4 for tonight, and we'll talk about it before the town meeting on,
And Mr. Sullivan said he will attend your meeting prior to
Okay.
town meeting.
all right, Bob, you got that?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so we'll wait for more numbers to come in, and then we'll talk about it the night of the town meeting. We'll meet like 6:15 or 6 or something like that.
Yep.
Okay?
All right, sounds good.
All right, thanks, Bob.
So,
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just a
Yep.
couple of philosophical points on this project.
Yep.
Again, I'm trying to minimize how much I say at town meeting. There are times when you look at a project and say, I wish it could be different. And this is one of them. And rather than hide from that, I want to just come right at it and say that's true. My observation when I walk up and down Depot Street is that most of the sidewalks, with the exception of some of the panels on this side of the road, the town hall side, are actually in really good shape. The road itself is in excellent shape compared to many of the roads around Douglas. But the water pipes under the roads are 100 years old. And there's a customer service and customer quality issue there, but perhaps the most compelling issue is that we have this beautiful building. This is a fantastic building. It was a gift to the town. Schuster and Hayward and all the industrialists, and we only use half of it. And we can only use half of it because we need to sprinkler the second floor, and we don't have a code-compliant fire suppression water line, water service coming into the building. Right now, the domestic, the faucets are connected to the same water service as the sprinkler risers for the first floor. So you're losing, as a matter of asset management, you're heating and cooling and maintaining this great big building, but you're only using half of it. And that really isn't the pattern we're trying to set in terms of asset utilization for the town. We want every square inch that we own to be utilized by the taxpayer or for the taxpayer's benefit. And I don't know what the future will bring. If economic development and everything in this town slows down to almost nothing, goes back to where it was in 2012 to 2016-ish, having this building fully operational will allow you to make some space changes for the police department without having to build anything new, without having to ask the taxpayer for an exclusion. So these are the considerations that go into this project. Mr. Sullivan knows I really just choked on the idea of doing these sidewalks because the sidewalks on Main Street really need the work. And if you're not physically fully able, you have a hard time getting around a lot of places in Main Street, and you might not up here on Depot and on Pleasant and Martin, well, there's not that much on Martin. But in any case, the best time to put sidewalks in is when you have the road dug up, because now you can set your curbs and pour the sidewalks properly. So one decision cascades to another decision that cascades to another decision, and then you end up with this complicated project. But what you're hoping is to put the town in a position where it can fully utilize its assets here for another 30, 40, 50 years without having to revisit the question. So that's the travel on this particular one. All right, thank you for listening.
Okay. Thank you. We carry on, everybody? So Article 5, eminent domain. Riedel Road, that's the same wording as 2 weeks ago. Any questions on that, anybody? That's the, it enables the town to own the land with the clear title, right? Matt, we talked about the whole...
Yeah, it's a legal device.
What's that?
Mapinoid is online if you had any questions.
Oh, okay. So any questions on Article 5, anybody?
I have some things to say, and I discussed this with Matt. I went into his office yesterday. I looked, on this. I have some serious reservations about this piece of property. But Matt did say that we can agree to do this, but that they will do the due diligence later before they actually hand over the money. Because, and then I went and I looked at your, in great detail, I looked at the appraisal. The appraisal's saying there's 11 and a half acres there. I don't know, not usable, I don't think. I saw that thing you gave me. It's not showing Riddlebrook, it seems, in the right place compared to what I'm seeing on some other stuff, which if Riddlebrook is not where, come in over here, you're really not going to have much land to use over there. So I got some real, I would like to see a lot of work done on this before the money is handed over, okay? I guess I'm okay with this, agreeing to take it by eminent domain and agreeing to come up with the money, as long as that those type of things are done before you hand the money over. I know when we originally looked at this parcel, because I was under the mistaken impression that it was contiguous with the fire department and the highway department, but it's not. Then another thing that we thought was we were going to extinguish that 40-foot right-of-way. Well, that's not going to happen either, because there are some other people who also have that. So there's a lot of stuff here. And then I am curious of Or should I wait till the next one on the amount of money that we're paying before we go into this? So you just want to talk about all of it right now?
So Article 5 is the eminent domain.
Right, right,
Article 6 is the purchase.
right,
So-
right. But we don't have to go through with this if after we get in there and do some due diligence. And I think you can explain why, you said you haven't had the conservation agent look at it yet, because we have to pay these people to do this. And, I mean, maybe you could explain some of the
Yeah.
things you said to me.
So, by way of explanation, Mr. Chairman, I agree with 95% of what Ms. Gogolinsky has pointed out. And I want to assure people that we're not in some headlong rush to buy a piece of property just because it's there. We did a feasibility study and looked at town-owned properties, and in addition to this one. This one was included because it has unique characteristics that would allow the procurement officer of the town to purchase it without going to competitive bid because of those unique characteristics. That is allowed under Chapter 30B, Section 16. It's a findings of fact. Having said that, if we go into the due diligence portion, the civil engineering portion around the wetlands crossings and other things, and find that the site would not be workable as anticipated, then we would simply not close. We would withdraw from this. We don't have that kind of purchase and sales agreement where there would be earnest money and a penalty. Having said that, this was by far the strongest of all the parcels we looked at for this particular application, a highway barn. It was the strongest because it's located in the center of town, and there is sufficient space there to build the anticipated building and maintain an existing building in its place and get the functionality out of it. I guess the only point I would not even disagree with Carol's opinion, but have a slightly different approach to it, is in terms of extinguishing the easement, there's a cost associated with compensating someone for losing their access. But because the other properties that benefit from the easement also have an easement out to Rydell,
Right.
we might be able to persuade them to accept compensation and extinguish the easement they have out to Maine. So I don't think it's a problem without a solution.
Right, but
At the end of the day, it's not used.
it costs money.
Right, it will cost some money. Getting back, this isn't philosophy, this is a reality. We don't want to spend good money twice. So I did not want to get into a really exhaustive civil engineer's due diligence review of this piece of property, only to get to town meeting and have town meeting say they don't want it anyway. So in which case, we will have thrown like a couple $100,000, $250,000 away, working out the wetlands crossing and all these other considerations, only to have town meeting say they don't want it. So I think the best question to ask town meeting is, if these things pan out, do you want it? And what is the upper bound on the expense? I don't even know that we can set that number. Having said that, though, site prep can't be so expensive that it makes the whole project unaffordable. So we've got to get, I've asked staff this week to do some estimating, right? So estimating on the cost of bringing public water to this site from Main Street, but looping it back to Rydell so you would benefit from a loop. So that's, I've tasked
No
that.
water on that Rydell right now, right?
Yeah, there is, but it's a 6-inch line.
Okay.
Not sufficient.
I looked, I rode down, I didn't see any hydrants or anything.
I don't think you'll see any hydrants. Bob's still on the line.
Oh, there, Bob's there?
Do you have hydrants all the way up to Heaney's property or no, Bob?
Bob's gone. Okay.
I'm here, I just couldn't get the remote mute off. We do have hydrants going down. The one that was in front of Heaney's, I think, disappeared when Heaney's project went in. My guess is whenever they went to supply his property, they pulled the hydrant and went off of that branch to supply his property. So there's not one there, but there are some down Rydell.
Okay.
There's one at the transfer station.
Okay.
But the fire flows are limited. It's an old AC pipe, and it's half AC and half cast. The cast gets a little tuberculated, you lose flow. It's kind of what happened down Gilboa Street. So when we did the upgrades on Gilboa Street, we went from less than 500 gallons a minute to we're at almost 5,100 gallons a minute now. So that's the difference in old tuberculated pipe and new, clean, modern pipe.
But I've also asked the highway superintendent to do as much research as he can on precast box culverts. And we will obviously have the conservation agent. Now, these are existing crossings, so I'm a little bit more confident going into a situation to improve an existing crossing rather than getting a brand-new one
Right.
in a wetland. So that's where my thinking is on this. Again, this town meeting's characterized by some hard decisions or some decisions in the face of a certain amount of uncertainty. But as I said earlier, nobody wants to buy a dog or have a failed project. That is not the idea here. We have timing issues and other considerations. By the time we get the project fully spec'd and we have a bond ready for consideration by town meeting for release for funding for this, we will be a couple of years, or at least a year hence. So it's another year of having the trailers outside, having the brandy new equipment either stuck outside or jammed into that little building. So those are the pressures that we're trying to balance, and
Oh, I agree.
I listen very carefully because I know Carol has a tremendous amount of experience, and I just want to learn from
My
it.
fear is this Riddle Brook going right through there, which is a perennial stream. You're supposed to stay 200 feet on both sides of a perennial stream. Okay, so there's Riddle Brook, here's your 200 feet. You don't leave much there, so that's one of the things you need to get before you even spend money on engineers. You need to find that out from your conservation agent if you are stuck with that, because if you are, this is a no-go. Don't spend any more money on it.
Right. And I agree with that. I would also say that, if you are curious and you want to go up and look at the land before town meeting, to be able to say that you did, we can arrange with the owner for that.
No, that'd be good.
I've been up there. What a great place to have a house. I mean, it is totally isolated. I like that. But when you look at the land as a development potential, I think you can see some things being right there, eyeballing it directly that you can't necessarily get from a map. I'm not saying that they would change the acreage that's available. I'm not saying that. I don't want to argue that point. I'm saying when you might have a higher comfort level when you see how the land lays next to the water up there.
What do you think about Article 5, everybody? This is just an eminent domain question. Any more discussion on that? You supportive of it, everyone? So would someone then move that we recommend to the town meeting that we pass Article 5 as presented? Somebody make that motion. Lynn, thank you. Second by?
I'll second it.
Okay. Ryan seconds that. Any discussion on the motion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
I'll say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain?
Oh, abstain.
One abstention. Okay, so 6 yeses and 1 abstention, okay. Now, if we go to Article 6, there's a wording change from 2 weeks ago, which is free cash. I think the original was raise and appropriate, wasn't it, Jean?
It may have been silent. It may have been.
It said raise and appropriate.
Transfer.
And now it says free cash, right? So that's for real. It's a free cash thing.
So there's only so much complex plumbing we can do, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
For the longest time, when I was scoping the size of this purchase, I thought about the budgeted balance, surplus, plus an amount to be released from overlay at some future date next year. And it's just, there are too many moving parts. So we'll encumber the free cash and use it as the source of funding to purchase it can go through. rather than wait for all these pieces to fall into place. It just
Okay.
creates too many contingencies.
Yeah, everything else is the same from 2 weeks ago, everybody except the word free cash is instead of raise and appropriate. So, and you heard Matt's explanation for that, so. Go ahead, Sandy.
If there's so many question marks about this land, then why are we, is there really a need to rush it to this special town meeting? There's so many questions.
Yeah, it's not a rush. I mean, we've been on this piece of land for 2 years, and I agree, Mr. Chairman, with Ms. Gogolinsky's comment. I think you can, and we should, have the motion worded in a way that provides people with the assurances they're looking for here, but doesn't prevent us from moving forward in the conversation. So it's almost like, why do all the engineering necessary to answer those questions if we still don't know that town meeting would approve us putting a building on this location? So if, I wish in an ideal world we lived in Iowa and everything was flat and everything were dry, and when we buy a piece of land, you just go out there and you put up a building. You put a slab on the ground, you put up a building. We don't. We live in Douglas, work in Douglas, and a lot of these parcels that remain that are outside of the forest have the topography of the town. So we're pretty sure there'll be gravel on this site, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All the things you deal with when you build in Douglas, you're going to encounter. And after we ruled out the two town properties, I had hopes up that the old Buckeye property would be more useful. And then I walked out in the back and I saw the size of the brook and how close it was really to the front. And knowing full well that we have to work around the easement for the old petroleum pipeline, and the building's a piece of garbage and needs to be torn down. And when you added all that up, it wasn't a good place to do a project compared to this, which is relatively unused, right? It's been residential for about 40, 50 years. So that's where we're at, is moving the engineering, the design, the purchase, the due diligence. We have to keep pressing forward on it to get a conclusion. I can only say it one more time, I guess. If it's not a good piece of property, we won't close. I don't feel that way, but I want other people to feel comfortable. So we won't, if there are too many objections, we won't close. But if we don't have, if you're a landowner, why are you talking to me? If I don't have the authority to negotiate a price with you, why are you dealing with me at all? You can sell it for what the appraisal, you can sell it for far more, I think, than the appraisal said, so.
That help, Sandy? Any more comments or questions on Article 6, anybody?
Yeah, I'm curious to why the purchase price, though, is more than what the appraisal was.
Because we're going to keep the house.
Okay, the appraisal didn't include the house?
No. So there's a credit for the house, there's a credit for a dam inspection report. So the dam is due for inspection, the owner is going to have the dam inspected and give us a copy of the report at her own expense. And there is a couple of cleanup items that she's going to take care of. There's an old, I don't even want to call this thing a structure, it's like,
Is she going to get rid of that?
yeah.
They-
Or we will. We're going to conspire to get rid of this thing, either fire department practice or,
Yeah, they don't do that anymore.
they can, but I don't know if they want to do this when the power lines are too close. And the last piece, Carol, is that there are utilities all the way out to the, so you have electricity all the way to
Yeah.
the site. And if you've ever tried to run electricity on poles, it gets pricey.
Big, I've done it.
Is it enough electricity for the highway barn?
We have three-phase on both Rydell and Main in this area.
Does it have three-phase out?
No, it's regular power, but I don't think we're going to go that high for the highway barn. I don't think we're going to be over 400.
Anybody else on 6? So we ready to have a motion to recommend as presented? Anybody? Or not? Sandy's got a furrowed brow there.
So moved.
All right, Ryan, second, anybody? Nobody wants to second it?
I'll second it.
Carol will second it, okay. So the motion then is to,
As long as they're gonna, before they hand over the cash, they're gonna look at it real
Do their
close,
homework,
and I'm in
right?
favor.
so the Article 6 as presented. So all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Abstain?
I'll abstain.
One abstention. So 7 yes, 1 abstention.
6 yes.
6 yes, 1 abstention. Okay. All right, let's carry on to Article 7. This is the general bylaw, scenic roads. So the tree warden can remove dead or dangerous trees on scenic roads without filing an application with the planning board.
Is that what this is about?
I think so.
Yeah, that's the only change.
I don't think it's, yeah, it's pretty much.
Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
Matthew Benoit, Community
Oh, hi.
Development Director on Zoom.
Hey, Matt, how are you?
Good. The only amendment to this bylaw is Article 7, that's item 2, where it says tree warden. Dangerous or unhealthy trees within the right-of-way, in the opinion of the tree warden, may be removed by the town without filing an application hereunder. Notice shall be provided to the planning board. The only reason the other items are on here is for the numbering change. Otherwise, that's the only item that's changing.
Okay, thank you, Matt Benoit. Any questions on Article 7, anybody?
I make a motion to approve it.
I second it.
You beat me.
So Carol moves that we recommend as presented. Howard seconds. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Matt Benoit. All right, Article 8. This had an addition to it, right? That number 4 under use schedule. Matt Benoit, can you speak to that a minute?
Yes, so the only addition was that town council, when speaking with Mr. Wojcik and Mr. Fraser, we talked about some of the pre-existing dwellings that have conditions on their special permits that say they have to be to in-laws or blood relatives. So this item 4, any restrictions on the use of existing legal ADUs in town are upon effective date of this bylaw null and void. This removes those restrictions so that they can conform better with the bylaw, and they're not restricted to blood relatives or in-laws.
So everybody, Article 8, as you have before you tonight, is the same as it was 2 weeks ago, except where it says 3.3.2 use schedule, Article 4 was added, which removes that family link, right, Matt Benoit?
Correct.
Okay. Any
This
questions?
removes it from pre-existing dwellings. The family component is not part of this bylaw any longer.
Right.
Per the state regulation.
Okay.
This is also being reviewed by the planning board at their public hearing tomorrow night. I don't anticipate any changes, but if any changes do come forward, those will be presented to the town for consideration.
Okay. Right, any questions, anybody? Article 8?
My only question is the quantum. It says majority on this sheet. This is a zoning bylaw.
I don't know that council reviewed these yet.
Let's just be sure, I think that's a 2/3.
Yeah.
It is a 2/3 zoning bylaw, absolutely.
Where are you, Matt?
I'm on this handout, motions and explanations.
It's a 2-pager, Dick.
It's a 3-page.
Oh, that one,
Yeah,
okay.
I don't know that council came back to review these yet. I think he just came back in, so we'll
Yeah,
ask him to.
he's on his way back from Bangalore.
Okay, everybody good with Article 8? Ready to make a recommendation, anyone?
I move to recommend approval of Article 8.
Okay, so Howard moves that we recommend Article 8 is presented. Second, Mike, thank you. Discussion, anybody? Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Matt Benoit.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Article 9 is lighting for the Douglas Middle School, Green Community Grant Fund. That number was changed, right? It was 30,000 2 weeks ago,
Correct.
and now it's 28,000.
Right, the project itself is 123,000, the 123.5 or so. And then the estimate we got from CMRPC was only 4,000 because I submitted a grant application, so they weren't responsible for that. So their estimate came in at 4,000. So the project itself is 127,000 and a little bit more, 127.5. So we're asking for 28 for the town match and 100,000 for the Green Community Grant.
So the wording is the same, everybody, as 2 weeks ago, except the number is not 30,000, it's 28,000.
Correct.
Okay. Any
We're going to
questions?
give a little back.
Yeah. Any questions, anybody? Article 9? Somebody move that we recommend it as presented? Sandy, seconded by Lynn. Okay. Discussion? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, Article 10, Old Webster Road. This clarifies the legal status of the ownership of Old Webster Road, right? Not Old Douglas Road. So that's the only changing in the wording from 2 weeks ago. Is 2 weeks ago it said Old Douglas Road, now it says Old Webster Road, but otherwise it's the same.
Yes, sir.
Anybody?
Yep, no changes.
Okay. Questions on Article 10, anyone? Someone move we recommend as presented?
So moved.
Michael, thank you. Seconded by Sandy. All right. All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries unanimously. 11 and 12 were not here 2 weeks ago. Matt Wojcik, can you walk us through them real quick? Indemnification and
Yeah, it's
injuries and such, right?
just to take a step back from it. State statute creates injured on duty status for public safety responders who get hurt in the course of doing their job. And there are two forms of protection extended to firefighters and police officers. One is this first one in Article 11, 111M. That's actually 41, it's not M, it's a different subsection. But it allows for leave without loss of pay. So the town insures against this risk. We purchase through Chubb a policy so that if a worker goes, if a first responder goes out IOD, then we file a claim against our insurance, and the insurance basically reimburses the town for the salary that is paid to that employee while they're on a leave of absence due to an injury. 111M is a local option, extends that same treatment to paramedics who are not certified firefighters and who are not sworn police officers. They are solely paramedics. In the past, the town hired firefighters who were also paramedics or who were also EMT basics, and that is how we staff the department. In order to accommodate or adjust to the lack of available medics, we've started hiring people who are paramedic only. And that they're still dealing with patients and stretchers and all of the physical exertion that can be required as part of the job. So we're asking town meeting to extend the IOD leave without loss of pay coverage with 111M in Article 11. Article 12 provides indemnification for the reasonable hospital, medical, and related expenses and charges incurred as the result of an injury sustained while acting in the performance of and within the scope of their duty without fault of their own, loaded clause. But it hems in what is eligible. But once again, that's the hospital coverage. That does not go through the employee's health insurance. It would go through this IOD indemnification.
And for each, the town's got coverage.
We have insurance. The insurance gets more expensive every year because the cost of healthcare goes up and because our payroll goes up.
Michael?
Question, is that in addition to or substitute for, say, workers' compensation insurance?
It substitutes for it.
Substitute for.
Any questions? We'll start with 11. Go ahead, Carol.
Would that kind of help our workers' comp rates where they're not having to pay that part of it? Do they give them any, because I would think that this type of stuff would be covered under workers' comp.
So to the extent that you want to do this exercise and break down our workers' comp premium by each employee,
Yeah, well,
when they move over to IOD, they'll disappear. There will be a net,
okay,
but I wish insurance were that simple,
yeah.
right? It's not going to be dollar for dollar net.
Oh, I know it's not, but sometimes you fight and argue every little dime with them. That's what I used to do. Oh, yeah.
We do. Pointless.
We do, and knock on wood, our premiums for workers' comp are very much under control. We don't generate a lot of claims on the town side,
Yeah,
either for that or IOD. That's why I keep knocking on wood. Our issue with our insurer is property and
Yeah.
casualty property. It's not workers'
well,
comp.
yeah, we're all getting into that. Like, I think everybody's got the latest homeowners policies. Wow.
Any issues with Article 11, anybody? Shall we have a motion to recommend as presented?
So moved.
Carol, thank you. Seconded
That was-
by,
that was-
oh, Lynn made it, sorry. Seconded by
I'll second.
Howard, thank you. Everybody clear on the motion then? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstained, motion carries unanimously.
I move to recommend Article 12.
Second?
Thank you. So Howard moves, Mike seconds, discussion. Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstained, motion carries unanimously. Okay, Article 13, Gleason Court enables the town to transfer the property of the old school building from the school department to the town and authorizes select board to determine its ultimate disposition. Any questions on Article 13, anybody? All for it or not?
The only thing that, and I guess maybe it doesn't have anything to do with us, but I had said this at the building facilities thing. When this comes up for the town vote, a lot of times people say, well, all those kids are walking to school. So I'd like to have maybe the police go over there and watch a couple of days on the way to school and on the way back and tell you how many kids walk to school, which they will find is probably none.
So I was brought to task by a town hall employee who has a child that does walk this.
Oh, geez.
I think you're going to find, as she pointed out,
Yeah.
in the afternoon, especially on a half-day, the kids will come down the road
Okay.
to go to Main Street, hang out at the
Because
pizza
they're
place,
gonna-
whatever.
yeah.
But in the morning, it's not
Right.
really the pattern. What that has to do with a piece of real estate, I'm not entirely sure. If this was in private hands, they would sell it.
Well, I remember the last time that we tried to do this, and I
Yeah.
remember the questions that came up at town meeting. That's all I was anticipating. But you know what? I say then just leave it alone.
I move to recommend approval of Article 13.
Okay, Howard moves, Article 13.
Second.
Second by Lynn. Discussion, anybody? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained. Motion carries unanimously. Article 14 is new from 2 weeks ago. Fire station repairs and improvements. Matt or Jean, can you tell us what that involves, please?
From the very jaws of despair, we're trying to grasp hope.
Very Shakespearean, man.
Yeah, I know. It's getting late, getting punchy. As you know, we have trailers outside the fire department where staff who work overnight catch their rest, because the air inside the building at the fire station is not ideal. Those air pressure and ventilation considerations dovetailed in time with the building getting struck by lightning and the electrical system of the place being pretty much fried up. So we're looking to restore the wiring in this building to a modern standard, increase the number of receptacles inside, greatly increase the amount of electricity that can be handled by the master service connection, have a whole building generator that will run virtually everything in the building so that it's not just partial, and adequately install a proper transfer switch and grounding and other things that weren't missing the first time. I'll try to boil this down real fast. This was a moving target for the engineers doing the design project, because we kept adding, well, how about HVAC? Let's make sure we wire enough juice in the building so that the HVAC is on their own circuits and they won't fry up and all the rest of it. That was done over a course of time, and one of the younger engineers in the project, I think he was a little bit frustrated with the architects and said, hey, you know what, this whole thing's gonna cost you $1 million. And I hiccuped on the phone and said, Town of Douglas doesn't have $1 million for this. We have about $300,000 in ARPA that we set aside, and that's all we got. So you guys have to do some serious value engineering on what you've designed here, or go away. The project has to go away. I have to move the money to something else because it's not viable. The senior engineer of the project said that would be a terrible shame because we're ready to go out to bid. We've done all the engineering. We have bid-ready documents. We're ready to post this. So let's go through it and value engineer it. He came down to this number, $540,000. What did we take out? We took out a rather ambitious fueling dispensing system. So we were going to try to keep the cost of diesel down by storing a larger quantity of diesel for the generator under or in a tank next to the generator, but use it to fuel trucks to keep the diesel circulating through the, so it wouldn't go stale. And I enjoy that kind of game because you can work with fuel prices to get a good deal for the town if you know what you're doing, and it's something I've done in the past, so I like doing it. But it's just too much. It's 190 grand, so it's not worth it. We wouldn't, the ROI on it won't materialize. It made sense when it was ARPA money. It's not town's money. So if the ROI stretches out 10, 15 years, Crimea River, we don't care. It's not our money. But when it is going to be the town's money, now we have to just get it out of there. The sprinklers, we think that anything we do to this building that adds to its footprint in the future will trigger sprinklers. When the building was built, there is a connection. So there's a dedicated fire service connection inside the building. It's run all the way up. I think it's coming in from the Main Street side. That's the good news. So we could do sprinklers in this building for a reasonable amount of money, but we haven't triggered the requirement yet. So we're going to put it into the bid documents as an add alternate. So if somebody comes in, thinks they can afford, or they're willing to bid all of the work plus the sprinklers and come in under 540, we'll do the sprinklers. But we took it out of the budget and used high numbers on the construction estimate to get to this number. I think it's a pretty good building, and we just have to take care of it. It was built to be a call building. People didn't charge their phones, their radios, their equipment that goes in on the ambulance. None of that was done back then. It is now. It's all necessary. Some of these systems need to be on dedicated circuits so that they don't fry other appliances in the building. So that's how we got to this point. It's short money because it's a $540,000 project for $236,000 of town funds.
So Matt, if the town approves this, how quickly might some work get started?
We need to obligate those ARPA funds as quickly as possible. So if town meeting approves this, we will go out to bid at the very next advertising cycle that we can get onto. So that means posting it in the Central Register, which is a Wednesday exercise to appear in the following Thursday. But we will get the money out the door in time.
So ASAP, huh?
Yep.
Anybody else on Article 14? Questions? So I just noticed the free cash somewhere, Judy. Someone move, we recommend this to the town meeting?
So moved.
All right, Michael, thank you. Howard, seconds. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries unanimously. All right, anybody have any questions for Matt Wojcik, or can he go home?
One quick
Okay.
question. Charging stations, what's the update?
They work swimmingly.
Excellent,
They are being utilized pretty heavily.
excellent.
Every time somebody connects, there's a flat dollar fee
Okay.
that is above and beyond the electricity, so they're paying for their electricity. I was hoping, as word got around, that by now we would be in a higher trajectory, but we still are, month over month, higher every month since they were installed.
So we're making some money on them, we're charging, and they're working.
You're not losing any money, and, right, so the electricity's not getting paid, at $1 a connection, it'll take a while to get to a return on investment, true.
So are we going to tell everyone, come charge up?
These things have a way of taking care of themselves. In the winter, people with EVs charge more, longer, because the cold is not a good environment for the battery, so I anticipate we'll see them utilized even more. Some of this was done with an eye towards what we'll be able to buy as a town in the future. So this might have been the last round of being able to get a quarter-ton pickup for the building inspector that doesn't need to plug in. And, frankly, I think the police department is very happy with their hybrid. Some hybrids can be plugged in, and I'll always have to charge off. So it's giving the town some options about it.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Question for Mr. Wojcik?
How long does a car stay there when it gets plugged in?
Depends on how much you have to charge. If you're down to zero,
Yeah,
8 hours.
oh, wow. That's how I run my gas tank all the time.
Somebody needs to follow me home.
You're like me.
Right there.
Yeah, me too. I'm on fumes.
Matt, you have anything for us?
I did, but it's escaping me.
Okay.
So I'm
Next
just going to
meeting.
let it go.
Well, thank you.
I
You
move
can,
to approve the minutes of October 8th.
okay.
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry, Hope. I don't mean to be a pain. I did read them. Howard is not in attendance, and I believe you were here.
Yes.
You are not listed as in attendance. So that's one. And then
You came later, I think.
Article 8 says, Article 8 accessory dwelling units. Mapinoid updated the new law that the governor passed that it will be by right, and the town needs to put the controls they want on this. No, I didn't think that was written very well. I would say Mapinoid updated the new law that was recently passed. And the town is looking to update the bylaw. Update the bylaw to, I guess I should have written this out ahead of time. Update the bylaw for the best benefit of the town.
But the thing is, that's not what he said. The minutes, aren't the minutes supposed to reflect what was actually said? I mean, it may not have been the most pretty way of saying it, but if that's what he said,
Okay. It's too late to argue. That's fine.
maybe we should, when he was saying it, we should have brought it, well, Matt, maybe what you mean is da-da-da, and then the minutes would have reflected that, but this is what he said, so.
Well, we have
What did you really mean, Matt?
Nope.
a motion that's been made and
I'm
seconded.
fine with what's been said, so if
Okay.
you want to amend it, that's fine. I mean, it's fifth paraphrase, right? I mean,
Yeah.
to accomplish what I was trying to say, so that's okay with me.
I think you made the motion, Howard.
As is. We can make the change.
And who seconded it?
Reference that I was here.
Who seconded it?
I seconded it.
Lynn does, okay. So the motion has been made by Howard, seconded by Lynn, that we approve the minutes of October 8, 2024. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. And thank you to our minute taker, Stephanie, for
So,
doing
Mr.
minutes. We got a
Chairman,
couple more loose ends.
I'm remembering what I was going to say, then I am going to leave.
Okay.
With respect to the CPA, I've read a lot of the comments that have come in from the master plan survey of the community, and I see it as our mission, if we find that there's a misconception somewhere on the part of the citizens, and we had many, many people answer the survey, it's a great response. One of those misperceptions is that the town's decision-making bodies are proposing this. And just to make it very, very clear, a group of citizens have petitioned that this be on the ballot. They successfully collected all of the signatures they needed and more to put it on the ballot, but it was not a function or recommendation of the select board or of the planning board or of this finance committee to take this step. And that, to the extent that the issue has been discussed, it's been to provide people with information on what they'd be voting on the general election ballot, so the presidential ballot. As a town, the staff doesn't take a position on policy matters that are before the town for a ballot question. And that includes not allowing signs to be displayed on publicly owned property that advocate for one position or another, or for one candidate or another. So this is a sweep we do every election. This is nothing new. But to the extent that we see signs on a piece of property in the public's right-of-way that would suggest that the town is taking some sort of position, we remove them. We don't destroy them. We bring them to the highway barn. People are told, your signs are here, they're your property, you may come pick them up. Please keep them out of the right-of-way and out of the line of sight for people turning at intersections. So to the extent that people noticed that happened, because we did have to move quite a few, that's what it is. It's not a position anti, it's a neutrality. We have to maintain the neutrality of everything that we do. So I just wanted to put that out there.
All right, thank you, Matt. All right, so we've got,
I am going to be excused.
yep.
Thank you.
Have a
Hey, Matt,
good-
thank you.
have a Good trip south. All right, we have a thing to sign, $827.33 postage for the FinCom flyer for the special town meeting. Any questions on that amount? Anybody? So I'll sign it and then pass it along, and then Lynn to Jean to,
We'll figure it out here in the back
we'll
end.
get her done here. So,
Right.
Well, the chair is signing that. What is the pleasure of the time, starting time for the meeting before the town meeting?
not up to that yet.
We
I'm
passed.
thinking 6, maybe.
Is there more copies or just the top sheet? Just the top sheet.
Is that okay, everybody, 6 o'clock? Annual, the special town meeting starts at 7. We may have more than just the water sewer to talk about, but, so we tentatively plan on 6?
6.
I'll email you just to remind you, but,
What do you need to start? Do you need 5 to start?
yep.
You're going to be close. I won't guarantee 6.
Okay, we'll do the best we can.
Okay.
Yeah, it's tough for me too at this
I
time
mean,
of
you
year.
think we could do 6:30? I mean, what do we got to look at?
6:30.
All we got was one little thing, right?
I can analyze in half an hour if you can.
I mean, I think we could do whatever we have to do in a half
You want to
an
do
hour.
6:30, everybody?
Yeah, I
That would
think
be-
6.
Okay, we'll try that.
6:15?
We'll move fast, I guess.
You can show up at 6.
Wow. Carol's little thing has been $3 million.
Are you guys okay with me working with staff to come up with a little sentence for each warrant article on the context? You're
Yes.
okay with that?
Yes.
We're all in
And-
favor.
And me doing a little message to the voters, you're okay with that
Yeah,
too?
always.
Yes, you always do a very good job with your message.
That's why we won't let you read out.
That's why you're the chair.
Get stuck with it.
All right, anything, anybody? All right, motion to adjourn, anyone? Sandy, seconded by Michael. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, oppose, abstain, motion carries. We adjourn at 8:56.
Thank you all.